The Dolphins take on the Niners, 4:05 p.m. Eastern kickoff in Santa Clara. The Niners are the 8.5-point favorite at home, totals 47. We're hitting at 67% for the entire 2020 season. And my NFL tier package plays on patreon.com/BrockPage. We're also currently 11-3 with a push in our last 15 crowd pleaser teasers on that site as well. Good for 79% during that stretch, by the way. For more information on how you can access this exclusive premium content, link for that site is in the description section below. And once again, that's patreon.com/BrockPage. Now, the Dolphins have successfully covered the number in 2 out of their last 3 games, Jaguars and Bills to be exact. This Miami offense is averaging nearly 24 points a game, and they rush for over 106 yards on the ground per contest as well. Ryan Fitzpatrick's completing nearly 70% of his passes, and he's just a hair shy of the 1,000-yard mark for the season. He's also rushed for $115 and 2 scores. Fitzpatrick's 2 favorite targets are Parker and Gesicki, who's combined for over 460 receiving yards together. Now, this Fins offense ranks in the top 10 in fourth quarter scoring, while also ranking in the top 5 in fewest third quarter points allowed. Jerome Baker leads the club in tackles with 32. He also has 2 tackles for loss and a forced fumble. Linebacker Kyle Van Noy also has 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery to go along with 16 tackles and a couple of sacks. And defensive back Xavier Howard has 2 interceptions and 2 PBUs on the season as well. The Dolphins have successfully covered the number in 11 out of their last 16 when catching the points. They're taking on a severely banged up Niners team who's coming fresh off a 5-point outright loss to the winless Eagles at the time. The Niners have failed to cover in 2 out of their 4 contests on the season, and they rank in the top 15 in the league in most fourth quarter points allowed. The San Francisco 49ers are also winless in 2 tries at Levi Stadium this season, 0-2 against the number in those contests. Sherman and Ansah are still on the IR. Ford and Coleman are on the IR as well. Garoppolo, Johnson, Williams, Mostert, Witherspoon, Mosley, and Greenlaw are all listed as questionable. And when it comes to the total on this one, when it comes to the scoring, San Francisco's 2-0 to the under at home this season. Meanwhile, the Dolphins on the other side of things saw both of their road games on the season stay under the total themselves. Give me the Underdog Dolphins plus 8.5, keeping this one close, and the under 47 in that game. And before we go ahead and move on, just want to take another quick timeout and welcome you to the video. Got some lines and personal leans out for NFL Week 5. But before we go ahead and dive into some more free content right here on YouTube, I just want to quickly remind you once again that we are currently hitting at 67% for the entire 2020 season in my NFL tier package plays on patreon.com/BrockPage. Access to the NFL tier costs just $11.99. That's $11.99. We're also 11-3 with a push in our last 15 crowd pleaser teasers on that site as well. For more information on how you can join in on the action, the link for that site is in the description section below. And once again, that's patreon.com/BrockPage. And moving on, we're going to take a look at the Broncos Patriots, 4:25 p.m. Eastern kickoff in Foxborough. Game is currently off the board. Really don't even know if they're going to end up playing it. But New England may have to go to work again, once again, without quarterback Cam Newton. Still not too sure his status with regard to COVID or the protocols at this point. But what we do know is that his backups stink. Brian Hoyer, 15 of 24 for $130 and no touchdowns. Hoyer was also sacked a couple of times and threw an interception against the Chiefs. And then Jared Stidham replaced him, and he isn't much better. Just 5 of 13 against Kansas City, 60 yards and a couple of interceptions. The Pats have lost 2 out of their last 3, and they failed to cover the point spread in a couple of those matchups as well. Now, New England is in the bottom 10 in scoring, bottom 10 in passing. Their opponents are also averaging 6.1 yards per play on the defensive side of things as well. And speaking of defense, All-Pro Stephon Gilmore contracted COVID overnight, so don't expect to see him Sunday. Meanwhile, the Broncos on the other side of things one of the better covering teams in the NFL with regard to the point spread, despite their straight-up record. And believe it or not, Denver's 3-1 against the spread thus far in the season, and they are coming off a nice outright victory over the Jets, where they put up 37 points. They're also a perfect 2-0 against the spread in their couple of road games this season as well. This Denver defense ranks in the top 10 in fewest yards allowed per play, top 10 in fewest third quarter points allowed as well. Now, linebacker Josie Jewell, real tough guy. He's got 30 tackles on the year, 2 sacks. Harris and Chubb each have 2.5 sacks on the season as well. This Broncos squad has successfully covered the point spread in 5 out of their last 7 contests against the AFC, of course, dating back to last season. Now, keep an eye on Harris, Lindsey, Locke, Otuachu, and Hamler, all listed as questionable. Fant is out against New England as well. Now, total-wise, 2 out of Denver's last 3 ball games got over the posted number. Denver's also 2-0 to the over when traveling. Meanwhile, the Pats saw 2 out of their last 3 contests get over the line themselves. So with all that said and done, if this game is even played for that matter, and if these numbers come out within reason, when the lines come out, I'll probably end up leaning toward the Broncos plus the points in the over in that contest. And speaking of another game that's off the board, another game that's OTB right now is the 1 o'clock game that I skipped in part 1. I'm talking about Buffalo taking on Tennessee. We're kind of moving backwards here a little bit, but that game's off the board, and Tennessee's Week 4 matchup was canceled. But regardless, these guys have failed to cover the number in each and every one of their 3 games thus far in the season. Now, the Titans failed to cover against the likes of the Vikings, Jaguars, and Broncos through 3 games. They also rank in the top 10 in most pass yards allowed per contest, top 3 in most rush yards allowed per game. Now, their opponents are throwing for nearly 260 yards through the air per contest, and they're rushing for almost $170 a game on the ground. That could really, really hurt a team. Needless to say, this Titan defense ranks in the top 3 in most yards allowed per play. They're taking on a red-hot, undefeated Buffalo squad who's coming fresh off a 7-point victory in Las Vegas. The Bills are 2-0 against the spread in their last couple of games, 3-1 ATS for the entire season. Very good covering team thus far. Josh Allen has thrown for over 1,300 yards and a dozen touchdowns. Allen's currently completing 71% of his passes. His favorite target, hands down, has got to be Stephon Diggs, who's caught the ball 26 times for 403 yards and a couple of scores. Buffalo's in the top 3 in pass yards per game, top 5 in yards per play. Allen's throwing for over 330 yards per game, and the Bills have scored 30 points or more in their last 3 straight. This Buffalo defense on the other side also ranks in the top 10 in fewest rush yards allowed per contest. Jordan Poyer leads the team in tackles with 34. He also has a forced fumble and 3 tackles for loss on the season. Micah Hyde also has 28 tackles on the year, 2 pass breakups from that safety spot. Buffalo's won 8 out of their last 11 road games over the past couple of seasons. Now keep an eye on Beasley, Milano, Wallace, Phillips, and Moss, as they are listed as questionable for this Buffalo Bills franchise here. And when it comes to the total in this one, Buffalo's currently a perfect 4-0 to the over thus far in the season. Meanwhile, the Titans, on their side of things, they saw their last 2 straight get over the number themselves in one of those contests at home in Nissan Stadium, one of those overs. So whenever these lines open up, and if they open up within reason, it looks like I'm most likely going to be leaning toward the Buffalo Bills ATS and the over in that contest. All right, back to the later games, back to the afternoon games. I'm talking about Colts, Browns, 4:25 p.m. Eastern start time. The Colts are the 1.5-point favorite on the road. Total's 47. This Colts defense is allowing just 14 points per contest and less than 160 yards passing through the air. They're currently on a 3-game winning streak, and they've gone 3-1 against the spread thus far on the season. Now, Darius Leonard leads the team in tackles with 27 of them. He also has 2 tackles for loss and 2 pass deflections as well. T.J. Carey and Xavier Rhodes both have a pair of interceptions from that secondary. And, of course, can't forget about Big Justin Houston, who's got 3.5 sacks and 4.5 tackles for loss. The Colts are in the top 5 in fewest rush yards allowed per contest, top 3 in fewest yards allowed per play. They've held their opponents to 11 points or less in their last 3 straight games. Now, injury-wise, keep an eye on Kerry, Leonard, and Yasin, as they are listed as questionable. Just mentioned how impactful those guys have been defensively, so definitely want to keep an eye on the status with those guys there. Now, the Colts are taking on a Cleveland squad who failed to cover the number in 2 out of their 4 games thus far in the season. The Browns are in the bottom 5 in passing yards, bottom 10 in points allowed. Now, Cleveland, they are giving up 32 points per contest on average, and they're allowing over 310 pass yards per game. The Browns also rank in the top 3 in most first quarter points allowed, top 5 in most fourth quarter points allowed as well. Claiborne, Njoku, Ogunjobi, Davis, and Williams are all questionable. And of course, RB1 Nick Chubb is on the IR with a knee injury. Now, total-wise, Cleveland, they do rank in the top 3 in the league in rushing, so look for them to potentially have a few long sustained drives, really eating up that clock. The Browns also saw their Week 1 contest against the Ravens stay under the posted number as well. Meanwhile, the Indianapolis Colts, on the other side of things, are 3-0 to the under in their last 3 straight themselves. Give me the Colts minus 1.5 and the under 47 in that game. All right, next matchup, it is going to be Giants-Cowboys, a little NFC East action here. Somebody's got to make some headway in the division, 4:25 p.m. East. Cowboys are minus 10, totals 54. Cowboys are on a 2-game losing streak and failed to cover the point spread in 4 games this season. This Cowboy defense is allowing 37 points a game and over 172 yards on the ground. Matter of fact, Dallas has given up 38 points or more in their last 3 straight. They're in the top 3 in most rush yards allowed per contest, top 3 in worst defensive time of possession. They are taking on a Giants team who's coming fresh off a solid ATS cover against the LA Rams in Week 4. And as a matter of fact, the Giants have successfully covered the point spread in 2 out of their last 3, and that's going to include a successful cover against the Chicago Bears. This Giants defense ranks in the top 10 in fewest pass yards allowed per game. They're also in the top 10 in fewest yards allowed per play. Now, 2 out of their last 3 losses were just one-possession games, so even though their record doesn't indicate as such, they have been somewhat competitive. Now, Blake Martinez has a whopping 43 tackles on the year, a couple of sacks, and 5.5 tackles for loss. Logan Ryan has 22 tackles and a forced fumble, and we don't want to forget about Williams and Fackrell, who each have a pair of sacks as well. This Giant defense ranks in the top 5 in fewest third-quarter points allowed. When it comes to the total in this one, 3 out of the G-Men's 4 games on the season stayed under the posted total. Good defense combined with an offense that can't move the ball well. That's a recipe for unders. New York's officially 2-0 to the under on the road for the season as well. Meanwhile, the Cowboys on the other side, for as many points as we've seen in their games, they did see their Week 1 contest against the Rams stay under the posted total themselves, and that's similar to the Giants' outcome last week, who played the Rams themselves. So with all that said and done, give me the New York Football Giants plus 10, keeping this one close, and the under 54 in that game. All right, next matchup, Vikings-Seahawks, Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. Eastern kickoff at CenturyLink Field in Seattle. The Hawks are minus 7 at home, totals 57 and a hook. The undefeated Seahawks are also a perfect 4-0 against the point spread on the season, really cashing in for their backers. They're in the top 3 in passing, top 3 in yards per play. The Seahawks are averaging 36 points per contest and scored 31 points or more in all of their games. Russell Wilson's thrown for over 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns. He's currently completing nearly 76% of his passes. His favorite targets have been Tyler Lockett, who's caught the ball 26 times for 298 yards and 4 scores. And, of course, the home run hitter has been DK Metcalf, who's got 403 yards receiving on the year and 3 touchdowns. Metcalf's averaging an astounding 25 yards per reception. And the Seattle defense on the other side, as shaky as they've been, they're still allowing just 75 yards on the ground per contest. Bobby Wagner leads the club in tackles with 38. Griffin and Neal each have a pair of interceptions from the secondary. Now, Seattle does rank in the top 3 in first quarter and third quarter scoring. No real surprise there. Thorpe, Hyde, Dunbar, Adams, and Hill are all banged up for Seattle. Keep an eye on them. They are taking on a Vikings squad who lost 3 straight to open up the year, and they nearly blew it this past week against the hapless Houston Texans. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are throwing for under 225 yards a game. Meanwhile, Kirk Cousins is completing a measly 62% of his passes. Cousins has also been sacked 10 times and has thrown 6 interceptions. This Minnesota defense is giving up 23. They've given up 23 points or more in all their games this season, and they rank in the top 5 in most pass yards allowed per contest. They're giving up nearly 300 yards a game through the air, which will be very problematic against Russell Wilson. Now, Hughes, Boyd, and Sharp are all questionable. Anthony Barr and Danielle Hunter still on the IR for this Viking defense as well. Huge blow for them. Now, total-wise, the Vikings' last 2 straight did get over the posted number. And as a matter of fact, Minnesota's officially 3-1 to the over through 4 weeks. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, we're looking at a Seattle Seahawks club who is 2-0 to the over at CenturyLink Field this season, 3-1 to the over through 4 weeks themselves. So with all that said and done, give me the red-hot Seahawks -7 and the over 57.5 in that contest. And with that, we're going to dive into our next and final matchup for the show. It is going to be Monday Night Football. I'm talking about Chargers, Saints, 8:15 p.m. Eastern kickoff in the Dome. The Saints are -7, totals 51. Now, the Saints put up 35 against Detroit in their Week 4 victory over the Lions. The Saints rank in the top 10 in the league in scoring, and they average 31 points per contest. Now, Drew Brees has thrown for over 1,000 yards on the season. He's got 8 touchdowns, just sacked 5 times. That's it. Brees has also thrown only 2 interceptions, and he's completing 71% of his passes. Now, Alvin Kamara's been his favorite target out of the backfield. 30 receptions for the running back, 320 yards, and 3 scores through the air. Kamara's also rushed it for 236 and 4 scores as well. Smith and Sanders each have a pair of receiving touchdowns for the Saints themselves. And when it comes to this New Orleans defense, not a lot of people talking about the defense, but they're still one of the top rush defenses in the league, despite their troubles giving up a few too many points. And it's been that way over the past couple of seasons. Great rush defense. Now, Malcolm Jenkins leads the charge with 27 tackles in the secondary. Keep an eye on him. He's listed as questionable, so keep an eye on Jenkins. Trey Hendrickson has 3 sacks and 4 tackles for loss for the Saints as well. And, of course, Demario Davis has 4 TFLs, 2 sacks, and 26 total tackles for the Saints defense. That actually ranks in the top 10 in fewest yards allowed per play. Now, the following Saints are questionable: Cook, Jenkins, Thomas, Pete, Lattimore, Ramczyk, and Davenport. They are taking on a Chargers team who's equally as banged up themselves. Balaga, Taylor, Turner, Williams, Norton, all questionable. Harris, Eckler, and Tranquil still out. The Chargers are on a 3-game losing streak and rank in the bottom 10 in scoring. They also rank defensively in the top 10 in most pass yards allowed per game. Certainly not a statistic you want to be in the top 10 in. And when it comes to the total on this one, the Chargers are coming off a game with the Bucs that flew 27 points over the posted total. Meanwhile, the Saints on the other side of things, a lot of overs for them. They're a perfect 4-0 to the over for the season. Give me the New Orleans Saints laying the 7 and the over 51 in that game. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon. If you guys decide to get a package on Patreon here today, just keep in mind we bill you the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.